Hi, welcome to our channel of IGNOU Audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, Staff Training and Research Institute of Distance Education, STRIDE, Master's Degree Programs, Master of Arts, Distance Education, MADE, First Year. MDE 411 Growth and Philosophy of Distance Education. Block 5 Growth and Innovations. Unit 7, Mega Universities, Virtual Universities and Knowledge Media, Can we have quality with quantity?
Sir John Daniel Abstract. A review of traditional measures of quality shows that there is no reason in principle why distance learning cannot achieve high quality. The UK Open University is an example of a distance teaching institution whose excellent quality has been acclaimed nationally and internationally. The quality criteria used by Britain's National Teaching Quality Assessment Scheme are more profound and appropriate to all forms of higher education than traditional quality measures. The teaching systems of open universities can be organized to produce distance learning of quality. Today, the knowledge media, which arise from the convergence of computing, telecommunications, and the cognitive sciences, are bringing new possibilities to distance learning. The knowledge media could be used to further improve the teaching and learning systems of open universities. Looking at these developments from the perspective of the virtual universities suggests what they must do to ensure quality. Distance learning goes to the top of the agenda. In the last few years, the contribution of distance learning to higher education has become a focus of discussion in many countries. There are two reasons for this. First, the world now has nearly 30 years of experience of the success of a new type of university, usually called an open university. These new institutions have used various communication media to reach students at home because they have used new technologies to reach a new student body. These universities have redefined the mission of universities. In 1969, at the inauguration ceremony of the UK Open University, its founding chancellor, Lord Crowther, charged it to be open as to people, open as to places, open as to methods, and open as to ideas. To be open as to ideas is the raison d'etre of all universities, although they have not always been open to ideas about how to run their own affairs. However, the three other qualities of openness have distinguished the open universities from campus universities for almost 2 decades. The main aim of open universities is to open up higher education to more people. This is especially true of large open universities. Last year I studied these universities, which I call the mega universities, for my book, Mega Universities and Knowledge Media, Technology Strategies for Higher Education. I am delighted that my book has now been translated into Malaysian and Chinese, because the mega universities are the most important advance in higher education of the 20th century. I shall discuss the mega universities in a moment. Their aim is to be open as to people, which often means adults already in employment. To take education to such people, wherever they live, the mega universities have to be open to places. This in turn requires them to be open as to methods because they cannot achieve their aims through traditional classroom teaching. The second reason that distance learning has become a topic of live interest in many countries is related to the explosive growth of the interactive computer and communications technology of the Internet and the World Wide Web. The term virtual university has become associated with proposals for new universities grounded in this technology. But the phenomenon is more widespread than that. Many universities that have previously taught only on campus now say they are making courses available on the web. We can think of open universities and virtual universities as mirror images of each other. The open universities began with the goal of being open to people. To achieve that goal, they had to adopt the secondary aims of being open to places and open to methods. The virtual universities begin with the goal of being open to certain new methods, the knowledge media, which they hope will allow them to achieve the secondary aims of openness to people and places. The real and proven success of open universities and the apparent promise of virtual university projects have created an unprecedented interest in distance learning. This is causing many universities, implicitly or explicitly, to include in their missions the notions of openness to people, to places, and to methods. Some people think that this challenges the accepted notions of quality in higher education. Can distance learning be any good? Let us examine that challenge. I shall first review traditional measures of quality in order to argue that there is no reason in principle why distance learning cannot achieve high quality. Second, I shall cite the UK Open University as an example of a distance teaching institution whose excellent quality has been acclaimed nationally and internationally. Third, I shall examine the quality criteria used by Britain's National Teaching Quality Assessment Scheme and argue that they are more profound and appropriate to all forms of higher education than traditional quality measures. Fourth, I shall show how the teaching systems of the Open University in particular, and the mega universities in general, can be organized to produce distance learning of quality. Today the knowledge media which arise from the convergence of computing, telecommunications and the cognitive sciences are bringing new possibilities to distance learning. My fifth task will be to show how the knowledge media could be used to further improve the teaching and learning systems of the mega universities. Then, sixth, I shall review these developments from the perspective of the virtual universities and suggest what they must do to ensure quality. My overall conclusion will be simple. Universities can achieve high quality with distance learning, but quality can never be taken for granted. As in other areas of human endeavor, quality is the result of good design, thorough planning, professional implementation and careful evaluation. Today the rapid development of distance learning threatens quality and the perception of quality in higher education for two reasons. First, the early form of distance learning, postal correspondence education, had low status and a poor reputation for quality. Will electronic correspondence education acquire the same status and the same reputation? Second, applying technology to higher education challenges traditional notions of quality more profoundly than applications of technology in other fields of endeavor. What are those traditional notions? Traditional notions of quality in higher education. If you ask ordinary people what makes for quality in a university or watch parents who are advising their children about higher education, they will usually identify four criteria. First, there is the very simple criterion of age. Older universities are thought to be better. There is some validity to this criterion. If you take national quality assessments of British universities, there is a fairly good correlation with their age, although there are some notable exceptions. In the UK, York, Warwick and the Open University are all in the top 10 for quality and yet are relatively new universities. In Canada, to give another example, the University of Waterloo is very highly rated although not very old. You can do similar analyses for your own countries. Second, universities that are highly selective in the students that they take are thought to be better. This is the fundamental principle that the Open Universities has challenged. Throughout history, quality of education has been associated with exclusivity of access, somewhat like a golf club. But education is not like golf. The Open University philosophy is that there is no limit to the number of people who can learn at the same time. The space of the human intellect is infinite and allows everyone to play. Third, universities that provide lots of personal contact between students and their teachers, and between students and students, are thought to be better. We must take this criterion of quality seriously. Education is an exercise in human communication. I shall show that distance learning can provide that communication, and provide it better than campus universities. Fourth, universities with lots of resources of money, buildings and staff are thought to be better. This criterion of quality brings together the other three. Older universities have had time to accumulate wealth. Resources are always limited, so they are naturally linked with exclusivity. Personal contact and service cost money. I aim to convince you that these traditional measures of quality are outdated. The success of the economies of this region is a proof of that. First, when you make cars or computer chips, you do not consider that older factories are better factories. The reverse is true. Second, you don't consider that it is better to work to a small market than a large one. When you make computer chips or cars, you seek volume. Third, the issue of human intervention is more complex. But having a large staff is not good in itself. What you seek are highly skilled people performing specialized functions that add high value. And, fourth, appending more money than your competitor to achieve the same result is certainly not what made your tiger economies great. In Hong Kong, Korea, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia and the other countries of the region you have achieved success by being better organized than the rest of the world. This enabled you to use less people, materials and equipment to make quality products. That is also the aim of the Open Universities, and that is why the Asian Association of Open Universities brings together such a successful group of institutions. This means that Asian people should be particularly skeptical about the old criteria for quality. You have been successful by using other criteria related to the quality of your output in relation to its cost. But this is all rather theoretical. Most of us have spent our careers in higher education and find it difficult to abandon our belief in the old quality criteria. We need an example to prove that distance learning can be of higher quality than campus teaching. An example of quality. That is what I can provide. The example of the UK Open University should be a great encouragement to all of you because it has shown, and the British government has formally recognized, that it has transformed the quality equation. In this second section I shall simply report 3 pieces of data. First, the 3 higher education funding councils in the United Kingdom for England, Wales and Scotland are government bodies that have to assess the quality of the higher education programs that they fund. They examine the quality of teaching in each discipline and the highest quality rating that they award is excellent. Over the last few years quality has been assessed in many disciplines and you can now judge the overall quality of each UK university by the proportion of its programs that have received excellent ratings. You can see that among the 101 universities of Britain there is a small Premier League of universities where the majority of programs are excellent. The Open University ranks number 10 in this Premier League, and therefore in the top 10% of all UK universities. This is impressive, but second set of data show how far the Open University has actually redefined the notion of quality in university teaching. Let us look at some disciplines, separate out the programs in each discipline that are judged to be excellent and count the number of students involved. Then, let us find out what proportion of these students expressed as full-time equivalents are with the Open University students are the majority. In all the other they are a large minority. This is a remarkable result. Many people would not think that distance learning had a natural advantage in either geology or music, because of the need for practical work. Yet you can see that most of the students in England that are receiving excellent university instruction in those subjects are studying at a distance. My third set of data comes from Scotland. The Scottish Higher Education Funding Council recently commissioned a survey of part-time students in all Scottish universities. You can see that in every area but one the Open University scores higher, usually much higher, in student satisfaction than Scotland's campus universities. It scores 3 points lower, only 3 points lower on friendly atmosphere, which is itself a remarkable result for distance learning. You should all take encouragement from these remarkable results. I hope that you each have results from your own countries which show how open universities are steadily overtaking campus universities in the quality of their teaching. True measures of quality. But how do we measure quality? What do these results mean? For the third part of my talk I shall say a few words about how the Higher Education Funding Council for England measures quality. It aims to assess the student learning experience and student achievement against each university's aims and objectives. 6 core aspects of higher education provide the framework for the assessment. They are curriculum design, content organization, teaching, learning and assessment, student support and guidance, learning resources, quality assurance and enhancement. In each university, the teaching of each discipline is graded in each of these 6 areas on a scale of 1 to 4, where a score of 1 is unsatisfactory. This means that you can achieve a maximum score of 24 points for each discipline. The Funding Council considers that a score of 21 or above means an excellent program. I am pleased to say that the last assessment at the Open University, which was of the sociology program, produced a score of 24 out 24. This was the first time any English university had achieved that top score. I hope you will agree that the 6 criteria used in assessing higher education in England are more appropriate than the traditional measures of age, exclusiveness, personal contact and resources that I outlined earlier. Quality in distance learning. For the fourth section of my talk, I shall examine how the UK Open University and all open universities achieves quality. I suggest that there are 4 ingredients. First, high-quality multimedia learning materials. Study materials must be excellent and varied to make study in the home or the workplace a congenial university experience. One way of ensuring quality is to have courses produced by multi-skilled teams. Such teams include a number of academics, so that the structure and concepts of the course are developed in a critical and intellectually fertile environment. They also include people skilled in design and production of the media that the course will use. Editors, TV and audio producers, graphic designers, software specialists, experts in student assessment and so on. The challenge is to get a good balance between the time and effort invested in making the course and the quality of the student experience. The great advantage of the large open universities, what I call the mega universities, is that they can afford to make large investments. However, smaller universities can use the same principle by working collaboratively to produce courses. The second key to quality in distance learning is dedicated personal academic support. Each UK Open University student has his own tutor for each course, one of OU's 7,000 associate lecturers. These part-time academic staff comment on and mark the students' assignments, hold group meetings where possible and give support by phone and email. Not all students choose to attend the group meetings, even when they are available, but nearly all students rate the help from their tutors very highly. The third quality element is slick logistics. Each individual student must receive the right materials and information at the right time. With over 100,000 students, that requires careful attention to detail. Fourth, a strong research base. When thousands of students use the materials for each course and millions of people view each TV program, the content must be academically up to date. Thanks to economies of scale, the Open University has the resources to move the academic paradigm steadily forward. In the UK, the funding councils also assess the quality of research in each university on a regular basis and use the same to determine how much money that university gets for research in each discipline. For research, the Open University now ranks 28 out of 101 UK universities. Each OU faculty is conducting research of international caliber. Some of our research has become well known in the last couple of years. One of the world's leading experts on the interesting question of whether there is life on the planet Mars is Professor Colin Pillinger of our Earth Sciences Department. Those are the 4 elements on which the UK Open University has established its reputation for quality. I believe that they are generally relevant to distance learning. That means that an important test of the usefulness of any new technology to distance learning is to ask how it can contribute to these elements of quality. Let me now look at today's new technologies, which I call the knowledge media, through this lens. Examining the implications of the knowledge media for the distance teaching mega universities was an important aim of my book. The contribution of the knowledge media. Various terms have been coined for the new combinations of technologies that are creating so much enthusiasm in today's world, such as telemetric, the information superhighway and multimedia. I prefer the term that has been coined by my colleague Mark Eisenstadt, knowledge media. He uses this term to designate the results of the convergence of computing, telecommunications, and the cognitive science. Eisenstadt's term challenges us as academics because he believes that the combination of present technologies with what we know about learning will change fundamentally the relationship between people and knowledge. That's because the knowledge media are about the capturing, storing, imparting, sharing, accessing, creating, combining and synthesizing of knowledge. The knowledge media are not just a technical format, such as CD-ROM or computer conferencing, but the whole presentational style, the user interface, the accessibility and the interactivity. All universities are asking themselves what the knowledge media mean for them. Academics are effervescing with individual projects. Politicians and policy makers dream of creating virtual universities. Will virtual universities ever be real? Whether virtual universities become real universities will depend on whether they can contribute to the reinforcement of the 4 elements of quality that I have listed. Let me take them in turn, starting with the creation of high-quality course materials. Course materials. The knowledge media can contribute directly to course materials by providing components of those materials. They can also help by providing new techniques for staff to use in developing courses. For all of our universities, the use of knowledge media in course materials is still constrained by the equipment to which our students have access. The minimum equipment that a distance student needs in order to benefit from the knowledge media at home or at work is a computer, a modem and a phone line. This year, 1997, some 30,000 Open University students have this equipment. That is about 1/5 of the OU's 150,000 students, so this is still a minority sport, although numbers are growing fast. In nearly all cases, the equipment that the 30,000 students have allows them to read and send text. Very few can receive or send audio or video through their personal computers, even though, of course, it is possible to circulate audio and video on the World Wide Web. This means that if we want to use the full teaching advantages of multimedia technology, we have to use them in a standalone fashion by providing students with CD-ROMs rather than making the material available on the web. That, of course, poses another equipment problem, because not many OU students have high-performance CD-ROM players at home. At beginning of 1998, the OU will launch a new version of its first-year science course. This course has made a large commitment to CD-ROM technology. Students will spend some 40 hours working with CD-ROM, and we are very proud of the quality of those materials. However, because of the requirement to have a CD-ROM player, the numbers of students registered in the course has dropped compared to this year. However, there will be about 3,000 students taking the course, and we hope numbers will rise in subsequent years. I hope that you will examine our CD-ROM on basic science for use in your own institutions. Developing such material is costly, and it makes sense for you to take advantage of the investment we have made. This raises another issue, which is now the focus of important work by Professor Dina Lauria, the OU's Pro-Vice Chancellor for Technology Development. Dina is interested in matching the time the staff invests in producing materials using particular media with the time and effectiveness of student learning from those media. To take an extreme example, it does not make sense for the course team to invest 90% of its resource on developing a component of the course that accounts for only 10% of the time that students spend on the course. This kind of work is increasingly important, because it is a sad fact that with each new medium, the time that is required for developing good materials seems to increase. The knowledge media are proving useful in the process of course development. First, they allow faster communication and document exchange between members of a course team. Second, they allow members of the course team to keep in contact with students and observe the way they study the course, in ways that were not possible previously. Student support. From our experience at the Open University, I believe that the major contribution of the knowledge media to course materials is still to come. Its success will be determined by our own skill in developing good teaching materials using new methods and by the students' willingness to acquire the necessary equipment. However, I can report that the helpful contribution of the knowledge media to student support is already clear. Student support is the second vital element in quality distance education. The key to the success of the knowledge media in enriching the discourse between students and our universities, and very importantly between students and students, is Metcalfe's law. This says that the value of a computer network to a user is proportional to the square of the number of other users. We can already see this law at work in the Open University. Each year more than 1,000 students are networked in our program of training for teachers, the postgraduate certificate of education. This gives rise to a wonderfully rich web of communication between students as they help each other and discuss the course, especially during their periods of teaching practice. As far as tutoring is concerned, we have found that computer communication and computer conferencing have required us to develop new techniques. Students are less shy about sending emails to their tutors than they were about calling them on the telephone. In order to avoid an increased workload, our tutors have developed techniques for moderating conferences, posting the answers to frequently asked questions, and creating student self-help groups that have proved successful. Logistics. The third key to distance learning of quality is good logistics. Here the development of modern computing systems has already been vital to the success of all our institutions. The development of distributed and interactive computing will enable students to do far more administrative operations themselves, with significant savings in cost and time. However, reliability is vital. At the Open University, we now process over 1 million student assignments each year. These are a vital element of our teaching strategy, as well as a means of assessment. We are developing methods that will allow students to submit assignments electronically instead of using the post. Obviously, we shall not introduce electronic submission generally until we know it is reliable. If even 5% of assignments were to go astray in the internet, that would mean 50,000 unhappy students. Research. The final element of good distance teaching at university level is for it to be rooted in research. The immense contribution of the internet to improving communication between researchers is already clear and does not need further elaboration from me. In summary, I have shown that the knowledge media are potentially helpful in strengthening all four elements of quality in distance education. What are the implications of this for the proposals to create virtual universities? Making virtual universities real. I began by contrasting the origins of the open universities with those of the proposals for virtual universities. Open universities started from a commitment to open higher education to more people in more places and sought new methods to achieve that goal. The virtual university projects start from the assumption that new methods will enable higher education to be made more convenient by extending the boundaries of the campus all over the world. My caution to the proponents of the virtual universities is the simple adage: technology is the answer. What was the question? Starting from the ends we wish to achieve is likely to be more successful than starting from a means that can be used to achieve various ends. But we must also be aware that the internet does have its own dynamic. This is still a very new technology, and without a willingness to experiment, we may not discover its most promising applications to distance learning. The key to success in using these technologies is to focus on learning rather than teaching. As you all know, there are two traditions of distance learning. One targets individual learning, the other focuses on group teaching. Whatever terms people invent, distributed learning, correspondence study, flexible learning, home study, remote classroom teaching, tele-education, guided study, or whatever, distance education still boils down to these two traditions, and they are very different. The most important difference is that the group teaching approach is based on synchronous communication. Teachers and students most communicate in real time. The individual learning approach is based on asynchronous communication. You create the university in the student's home so they can study there when it suits them. Another important consequence follows. In the group teaching scenario, the teacher communicates with students in a network of classroom in real time. It is a teacher-centered form of education. That is not meant pejoratively. It's simply a fact that if you try to set up a system for a teacher to address a number of remote groups, you must design it from the teacher's point of view. Under the individual learning scenario, you recreate the campus in thousands of homes, so it has to be a student-centered approach. You must determine what constitutes an effective home learning environment for the student. I believe that the new technologies have huge potential to improve further the quality of distance education that is based on asynchronous communication with individual students. However, I also see them being used in a very teacher-centered way, as a way of displaying and distributing lectures electronically. The students may no longer be in groups, but the focus is still on the class. I worry that these electronic correspondence courses may harm the reputation for quality that some open universities have given to distance learning over the last 20 years. That would be a tragedy. The answer is for all teachers and universities that use new technology for teaching to focus on the true meaning of correspondence, that is to say, the human interaction that is the basis of education. That means developing stimulating learning materials that students enjoy interacting with, even in the privacy of their homes. It also means developing systems of personal support so that the student who encounters a difficulty is not alone. Making virtual universities real. I began by contrasting the origins of the open universities with those of the proposals for virtual universities. Open universities started from a commitment to open higher education to more people in more places and sought new methods to achieve that goal. The virtual university projects start from the assumption that new methods will enable higher education to be made more convenient by extending the boundaries of the campus all over the world. My caution to the proponents of the virtual universities is the simple adage, technology is the answer. What was the question? Starting from the ends we wish to achieve is likely to be more successful than starting from a means that can be used to achieve various ends. But we must also be aware that the internet does have its own dynamic. This is still a very new technology, and without a willingness to experiment we may not discover its most promising applications to distance learning. The key to success in using these technologies is to focus on learning rather than teaching. As you all know, there are two traditions of distance learning. One targets individual learning, the other focuses on group teaching. Whatever terms people invent, distributed learning, correspondence study, flexible learning, home study, remote classroom teaching, tele-education, guided study, or whatever, distance education still boils down to these two traditions, and they are very different. The most important difference is that the group teaching approach is based on synchronous communication. Teachers and students most communicate in real time. The individual learning approach is based on asynchronous communication. You create the university in the student's home so they can study there when it suits them. Another important consequence follows. In the group teaching scenario, the teacher communicates with students in a network of classroom in real time. It is a teacher-centered form of education. That is not meant pejoratively. It's simply a fact that if you try to set up a system for a teacher to address a number of remote groups, you must design it from the teacher's point of view. Under the individual learning scenario, you recreate the campus in thousands of homes, so it has to be a student-centered approach. You must determine what constitutes an effective home learning environment for the student. I believe that the new technologies have huge potential to improve further the quality of distance education that is based on asynchronous communication with individual students. However, I also see them being used in a very teacher-centered way, as a way of displaying and distributing lectures electronically. The students may no longer be in groups, but the focus is still on the class. I worry that these electronic correspondence courses may harm the reputation for quality that some open universities have given to distance learning over the last 20 years. That would be a tragedy. The answer is for all teachers and universities that use new technology for teaching to focus on the true meaning of correspondence. That is to say, the human interaction that is the basis of education. That means developing stimulating learning materials that students enjoy interacting with, even in the privacy of their homes. It also means developing systems of personal support so that the student who encounters a difficulty is not alone. Conclusion. This is an exciting time for the Asian Association of Open Universities. Our universities have made tremendous progress in a short time. We have all brought the intellectual stimulation and economic benefit of higher education to very large numbers of new students. We have begun to establish a reputation for quality and even to redefine, in a more appropriate and profound way, the very meaning of quality in higher education. We now face the challenge of a new generation of technology. I have tried to show that if we use them properly, we can further improve the quality of the distance learning opportunities that we make available. But I have also argued that there is a risk that the widespread infatuation with these technologies may lead conventional universities to offer poor quality, teacher-centered materials that will tarnish the reputation of all distance learning. The answer is for us all to engage resolutely with these technologies so that we can set the benchmarks for their effective use, just as we have done with the previous generation of media. I wish you all well with this vital task. Thank you.